And when I was given this topic, I was like, forgiveness. Forgiveness. What is forgiveness? And I didn't know that it is something that I've been working through. And even during our Tuesday's fellowship days, I remember there's that one time one of our sister, we were doing a discussion and she was like, she wanna know how to battle in with forgiveness. And we were volunteering on who will help her because we were being assigned different different partners that will help each other walk out the journey. Yeah. And I comfortably volunteered to help our sister walk out through the journey of forgiveness. And here comes the topic. So yeah, I don't know how to say it, but glory to God. Amen. So forgiveness. When you hear the word forgiveness, maybe you think of being hurt. You think of a wrong that has been done to you. It is not something that comes in the present. So forgiveness, from my definition or from how I define it, it is an act of love or compassion that transforms our heart, relationship, and even communities. Like forgiveness is that when you say let it go. That is the best term I can use to define forgiveness. It is the idea of letting go, anger, maybe deep cut, or that one called resentment, something to do with what you are hold on to. You let it go. And most of the time, we tend to confuse the word forgiveness and reconciliation. But reconciliation is a little bit different when it comes to forgiveness. Because when you look at forgiveness, this is a personal decision that you release. But when you look at reconciliation, is you go further. That one evolves, it is under the restoration of a broken relationship, the rebuilding of truth, and maybe establishment of harmony. But when you forgive, you choose not, or you release, you let things go. What you hold against, or instead exceeding with what we call mercy, grace, and compassion. So with forgiveness, when you look at reconciliation, a party may be involved. You may be involved in a discussion, but reconciliation will not work if forgiveness has not taken charge. Forgiveness is an essential fundamental of reconciliation. So one thing about forgiveness is it must work for reconciliation to work. And forgiveness is the one that opens doors to reconciliation for creating an atmosphere of acceptance and understanding, and what we call restoration. So one thing you need to know is for reconciliation to requires active participation and willingness of both parties. And that's why when we look at reconciliation, we look at Jesus, who sets an example to Christians, who forgave us. He went undeserving. He didn't deserve all this because he was the Son of God. He was blameless. Yeah, but he had to undergo this when man went against God. And because God loved us so much, because I remember I've just said forgiveness is an act of love. He had to give man a second chance. And then Jesus came in through where our sins were so great, but he went this undeserving pain. He bore the weight of transgression on the cross and offered us a complete forgiveness and reconciliation with God. Then we are called now to emulate the divine forgiveness in our lives. I'm just giving an highlight of the topic. So when you look at forgiveness, it's just like a virtue that has been emphasized in, I can say it's countless, it's infinite, both in our religious teachings and even on philosophical traditions. Through history, we've seen it. Within our government, we have an evidence, but right now, we want to just walk the journey of Christianity and see what it reflects. I want you to look at the beauty or the significance of forgiveness in your life. The moment you decide or the moment you make this decision and say, I want to let these things go. I don't know how many times you've been hurt. I don't know how many times you've been betrayed. I don't know how many times maybe people have wronged you. I don't know who has hurt you. Or maybe things have gone against you. Or maybe you try to look for a job and the moment you get this job, all of a sudden these people stop you. You are so innocent, but you're told your job is terminated. I want to look you to look at that and feel what you undergo, or just imagine what this kind of pain you bear. You always feel like rejected. You feel undeserving. You feel you're belittled in a way. So it causes you a lot of pain. It causes you, maybe you can develop what we call hunger. It is out of unforgiveness hearts where hunger develops. So last Sunday, Mary took us in the book of Matthew, where Jesus was teaching his disciples how to pray. Remember, this is at this time, the disciples didn't know, or we can say they were not born again. But when you look at Jesus, he had to direct them how to pray, the Lord's Prayer. I believe we know it. When you look at Matthew chapter 6, verses 10 all the way to 14, but my key verse is on verses 12. Because we know the verse, we know how it goes. That from verses 10 is when he tells them, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, their kingdom come, their will be done on earth as it in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our debts, as also, this is the version, ESV is saying, as we also have forgiven our debtors. Some version say, as we've always forgiven our debtors, as we've forgiven our debtors, and lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Look at verse 12. Even after the prayer on verses 14, he emphasizes, for if you forgive others, you not forgive one, not forgive your parent or forgive your partner, but others. Others is to me inclusive of anyone. Their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you don't forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Yeah. When you look at that verse, Jesus had to emphasize, despite the disciples were still green in the kingdom, he was still nurturing them. But he had to bestow this virtue of forgiveness in them, even on how they pray, that they need to let things go. So when you look at that, you know that forgiveness has no bound, and it is always available to us when we seek in sincerity. Yeah. Because we are being told our God forgives us. So how do we forgive others? We need to align with the divine nature that is within us. That we embody the love and mercy and compassion that God has upon us. Because we are told we need to forgive others as God did it. Yeah. We'll get deeper into that. We see how did this God forgive us? How did it come to be? So I was just mentioning that when you talk of forgiving, there are key things that you obtain when you choose to forgive. If you choose to make this decision, if you choose to let things go, one, you are guaranteed of healing because you are caused pain and you are in pain, and now you've chosen to let things go. So that one, you are sure healing will be bestowed upon you. The other key thing, there's freedom. We will look at that, and the other one is inner peace. Unless you let things go, you will be battling inside. And I'm sorry to say, most of the people that we try to interact with, someone will tell you they're suffering from ulcers. Someone will tell you, I'm having an acid. It might be a condition, yes, in their body, but the genesis of everything would have been something that they refuse to release it. They have been battling in that stuff. So remember, it's also affecting your body. It is also affecting your heart. It is also about affecting your environment because things are not right with you. And even when you look at the letters of Paul, when you conclude, you always emphasize on peace be with you. Peace is very important. And then there's that what we call compassion. that sensitivity within yourself. So when you forgive or you let things go, these are the importance or the key things that we obtain from forgiveness. And I want you to look at the disciple of Jesus, Peter, who asked Jesus, how many times are we supposed to forgive one another? Remember, he taught them how to pray. That was in chapter 6. But later on, is it in chapter 18, where he tells them, Peter asks him, that is Genesis, or not Genesis, in Matthew 18, if I'm not wrong. Matthew 18, verses 21 to 22. It is when Peter came and asked the Lord, how often will he forgive his brothers? We understand the character of Peter in the Bible. Peter used to offend people when you look at his journey. Despite the good things, despite him being close to Jesus, he was an offender. And now there's this thing that was bestowed in him that they need to forgive. And because of his character or how he used to behave around his people or surrounding, he needed to seek clarity because this, the Messiah, was told them how to pray as God forgave them. And now he's like, how many times should I do it? Now that I've been told to forgive because it's a condition. By then they could see it is a law because it's a condition. Been told, unless you forgive them, God will not forgive you. Or you need to forgive because God has already forgiven you. So Peter asked, how many times will he forgive? And Jesus was clear to him, I don't say. Then because Peter gave an example of 7, and then Jesus told him, I did not say. You can see. Jesus was straight with Peter that you don't need to do it 7 times. But anything that comes after but disqualifies what was said in the present, and you walk the journey with what comes after but. He told him 70 times 7. And I can imagine you forgiving someone 70 times 7. We can do that practically. And it's not worthy. How many times will you keep on recording this? So it was like forgiveness is a continuous journey. You don't give people limits. You don't give people a bar. Like you need, this is the end of you. But it is a continuous journey. And what you need is the sensitivity, and then when you understand the divine mercy that is bestowed among humankind, is when you realize it is something that is continuous. It's like you're being told, man will always keep on offending you, because it is the same Jesus who tells us. I don't know, it is in which book. I'm sorry that I'm not quoting it, but it just come to my heart that we need to expect these challenges. Remember, we are on a battleground. This is not our home. We are living with different people. And even from the beginning, Genesis tells us in the beginning. So everything that is in the beginning, everything that is existing now, it was in the beginning. Yeah. Everything we see, we encounter in our lives, it was in the beginning. Yeah. All these things were there. So what I'm trying to say is we expect these things to be done unto us. Yeah. But for that divine or transformative power to work on us, that is when we exercise forgiveness. Yeah. It is not a one-time thing. It is not just an event or a season, but it's something that you'll work with all the rest of your life. I want to maybe take you, look at where you come from. Look at the people that you're born with. Look at the environment you've been brought. I'm sure we are not all privileged to come out of better or good backgrounds. But because you're a Christian, you're born of God, you've grown. And that's why you've realized you're not sitting on who hurt you. You're not sitting on who wronged you. You're not sitting on who betrayed you. But all you choose is to let them go. And you accommodate them within yourself. You have them at your heart. Because you've understood that letting things go, it's not only a command that we are told, or it is an emphasis on how we're supposed to do, but you're also checking at the benefit behind it. You said there's inner peace, there's healing, there is what you just said, there's compassion, there's freedom. So when you look at that, it is time to let things go. And there are various examples in the Bible that we can see this is being emphasized. I want you to look at the life of Joseph in Genesis 45, 1 to 15. Genesis 1 to 15. The life of Joseph. when you read the history of Joseph, we all know how Joseph was brought up. And when you walk with me in that journey, chapter 5 speaks of Joseph providing his brother and his family. But take a look. When Joseph was sold to slavery by his own brothers, he forgave them. That's when we can see him uniting with his family.
Yeah.
When they came to seek, remember Farmer was in a place and now he had to come to seek for rest. Let me call it rest or the harvest, because now it is a time that famine had affected them. But look at them when they were young; they sold him into slavery. But I'm looking at the God of Jeremiah 1:5. That before even we were concentrated in our mother's womb, God knew us, He formed us, He had preserved our purpose. So Joseph was not just sold into slavery, but he was being aligned to his destiny. And that's why when you look at that story in chapter 1, in verses 1 all the way to 15, the first verse is quite clear that Jesus, when Joseph could not control himself, he could not control himself. Because this is not just something that you've done, it's something that affected you. But look at him, he could not control himself. What he did, he cried and made everyone go out from him. That is verses 1. So on, one stayed with him. Let me read well. Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, "Make everyone go out from me." So on stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And verses 2 talks of how he wept loudly. And then he continues, because of the grace that was bestowed upon him, because Joseph was being aligned to his purpose. Look at him being reintroduced to his brothers. So it is the same thing we can tell that God reintroduces us to our enemies. There's that blindness He put into them that they can never know who you are until that's when we can see Joseph introducing himself to Joseph. But look at verses 2, he introduces verses 3, where he says, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" Yeah. Why you just direct? I'm Joseph and he's still my father alive. And these are people who hurt you. People who didn't expect you. They knew they sold you. They had gotten what they had. It's like when someone hurts you, some people are never intentional. They are just seasoned for that time. They don't look at the future. And that's why people will keep on hurting you. If you come and tell me, help me with your pen, and I'm like, no, I don't want. I don't look at the future. Maybe next time you'll be the billionaire who is in charge of that production. Why am I just refusing you with a pen? And so these men or the brothers didn't know, or maybe they never envisioned that one or this time they'll ever meet their brother, because they were just after what they were supposed to be given after selling their brother into slavery. And look at them, because they knew Joseph was a beloved son to his father. So they used to have that attitude of envy, some idea of envy. There's no virtue of a compassionate or being tender-hearted to one another. So, but look, I want you just to picture that image, and let's just go to the carnal world and check if it were you, maybe would you embrace your brothers back? Now that you've overcome slavery, you've been made somebody great in the government, and these are your brothers who sold in the slavery. What maybe will happen to you? Maybe even accommodating them, it may take a little. You may not even want to hear them. You like like you assume them, like you don't know them. But look at Joseph, because he was a son in the kingdom, we can say so. Joseph did not seek revenge. Joseph embraced them back. And then when you continue in verses 5, there's somewhere where Joseph, because he purposed to forgive them, he purposed to call them back, he purposed to accommodate them. It is when he confesses in and says, "God sent me before you to preserve my life. God sent me before you to preserve my life." And he continues, "For the famine has been in the land these 2 years. There, 5 years in which there will be neither plowing the harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you." One, he has emphasized that God sent him to preserve their life. And again, he still insists. When something is said once or twice, there's emphasis. It is not only to preserve life, but to preserve them. He had to show them that he had a position for them in their hearts. And when you keep on just walking the journey and see how Joseph was discussing it, it is not by himself that he chose to forgive. He acknowledges who God is in his life. And that's why he said, God sent him. God sent him. So he doesn't look what happened. He does not even remind them of what happened in the slavery. He just reminds them that God had sent him to save life. And we can see how did he show that these people are forgiven them. I'm welcoming you back. It's when we can see him, when you continue there, we see him have a talk with his brothers. And then there's a point where he talks, so we can see him when, I think it's verses 14. Verses 14, when you continue with the chapter, it talks where Joseph fell down on his brother's neck and wept. And then he kissed all his brothers. That is verses 15. He kissed all his brothers. It was a kind of confirmation that it is well with me. Forget about what has happened. So when you forgive, it's like this action of him weeping, and then we can see him kissing all his brothers. It's like it's telling you it is well. It's like you're putting a smile in their face and you are confirming, you're pushing hope to them that forget about what happened, because he didn't want to dwell on the past. He was looking at the future. So through that, from that story, we see freedom being exercised. Because you can imagine, you've gone to look for food or for a harvest because this is famine, and then you meet the person that you had betrayed. Only whatever you will do as a human being, you will retrieve back. But Joseph had to assure his family. And when you continue with the chapter, is when you see what Pharaoh does to his family. They give a chariot, they send soldiers to go and bring in the father, and he gives them a message on what to go and tell the father, for the father to believe. Because I'm sure when Joseph was sold, we can check that. When Joseph was sold to slavery, it was deep for the father. It was so deep for the father. But now, he had to make things straight. And for him to confirm everything. And that's why Joseph had to instruct his brothers what to go and tell the father. And when you continue with the chapter, ni kama baba yake alizirai kidogo. And then akamuka. And then he said he wanna meet his father before he died. His son before he dies. And that tells us how forgiveness is very important. How forgiveness can do to us. How forgiveness can work in our families. Remember, when you forgive, you choose to make peace with everyone. When you forgive, you prioritize healing. When you forgive, you emphasize on freedom. When you forgive, there is compassion in you. So you're not overwhelmed by what we call sorrow. You don't allow sorrow to engulf you. Yeah, so that is just an example of how forgiveness is powerful. And even in the New Testament, the story of the prodigal son in Luke 15:11 to 32. Luke 15:11 to 32. The story of the prodigal son. This is a story that even from our Genesis of Sunday school, we've been taught about the story of the prodigal son. This is a son who went to the father and he had to seek his rights. Because even now that happens. But now, I think time was not due and he felt like, I need my right back. I need to be independent. And then he walks to the city. And because he was just a human being. When we get money, he was in his life, in his path of life, what he saw it was right for him. But look what happens. The money is over. And the guy is again poor. The man goes and looks for maybe help, or what do I say? Where he went to work with the farm of that master. And he's made to eat with the pigs. Is it the pigs? Yeah. And then later on is when he comes back to his senses of how he saw his servants being treated at his father's place. Maybe he thought the world will treat him how his father treated him. And that's why he did not retreat. He had to fight back before he could surrender at all. But things were not okay. And then he sat by himself and he was like, you know what? I'm going back to my father and I'll confess to him that I've sinned against him, that he may just make me one of his servants. Yeah. But from that setup, we see even as he chooses to walk the journey, even before he could get to his father, the father had already seen him. And what he did is just order the other masters to bring that kind of robe. That robe shows, what did it show? It is an emphasis of royalty, an emphasis of what you treasure most. And he was dressed again, and everything was ordered, and there was this kind of feast that they're supposed to do. And now look at this other brother. He's like, Daddy, I've been always with you, but you've never done 1, 2, 3, 4. But the father was like, you need to rejoice before your brother who was lost has been found again. When you look at that, it tells you how parents relate with us so closely. A father is different from a master. A father is different, or a parent is different from your friends. Sometimes you may make a great mistake, or you may betray them, or you may go wrong against them. But let me tell you one thing: when you go back to them and acknowledge maybe what you've done and say sorry, a parent will always find a place in their heart to forgive you. A parent will always accommodate you. What we do is we retrench back and try and live in guilty. But when they say it is well with you, my son, it is always perfect with them. So this young guy, after he squandered his inheritance, he has forgiveness. In verses 20, we've seen that the father felt compassion. Verses 20, let me just read it. While he was still a long way, I think I've talked about, while he was still a long way, the father saw him and felt compassion. My word is compassion. And ran and embraced them. Look at that. He ran and embraced them. So when you have forgiven someone, when you've let things go, you always, there's something that you are attached to. Look at Joseph. We see him kissing his brothers, all the brothers. We see him weeping. Alilia akiwa amekelewa kwa shoulder ya Benjamin. So there's one thing that forgiveness does. It kind of releases what is in you. You're given rest. Yeah. It's an instant thing that comes to you. So there's that peace. You're a guarantee of peace. It's like you've been given a password to somewhere. Yeah. Or a password maybe to a bank, or a password to heaven, let me say so. So there is that peace. And that's why the father had to embrace him. He had to accommodate him. He had to feel him. That is just more than what you would ask from someone. Remember that nowadays we've acknowledged that money cannot bring happiness. Money cannot bring peace within you. But how you relate with one another, how you stay around your surroundings, guarantees you peace. And when you learn to let things go, when you learn to forgive one another, yes, it may be hard you go confessing to your friend or somebody within you and tell them, I'm sorry, I realize I made a mistake. Or you just tell them, but I choose to let things go. It takes a personal decision. Yeah. It takes journey. But forgiveness is just to start within yourself. Yeah. Look at this prodigal son. He acknowledges that he made a mistake. And that's why he sits and returns back and feels like, this is what I'm going to tell my father, that I've forgiven against you. I'm feeling what I did, and I'm ready to take up another chance in you. But a second chance, it is not as so magnified. It is just, he needed just a little chance for him to work as a master, a servant in his home. Not now as a son, but to be a servant. Look at how desperate forgiveness can make you be. Yeah. It makes you feel nothing. It makes you feel you don't deserve it at all. But when you let things go, you realize there's potential in you. There's future in you. So when you hold on to things, it doesn't mean that you will continue to go in far. Let me tell you, if you choose not to forgive someone, you will always confess, I'll never forgive that person. I'll never do this and this. But you realize you are locking some doors or some potentials in you. What if I choose to forgive this person? What will happen? We don't look at the other side. we just look at the present. Because now you have a grudge with someone, you feel like, no, enough is enough. But can you embrace what they do? Sometimes, in a personal walk journey, when someone hurts me or someone betrays me, I'm remembered of Romans 8:28, that everything worketh for good for those who love God and those who are called for His purpose. If you choose to love God, then there's no shortcut in forgiving. When this person hurts you, that is what I'm always reminded, that everything worketh for good. Maybe this person betrayed you, or maybe this person gone you wrong. Maybe they came in just to interfere you or to make you not be in a certain danger. I'm looking at somewhere where you're suspended your job immediately. You are hurt. But perhaps if you are a child of God, you are called according to His purpose. God, you love God. You need to embrace that situation. And He opened so many things that you didn't imagine of. He opened so many things that maybe you never thought of. I'm reminded, maybe I can give a testimony of myself. There's this one time you're done in school and you're like, what next? What's next? And then you're so desperate, of course. You're desperate what may come by, because you've remembered you don't have a tall relative, no one who has been into where you are. So no one will be there to help you. Then I remembered I have a Father who directs us. And then here I come back. There's this opportunity that has come. And I'm into it and I'm like, wow, this is a nice thing. I can pursue it. And all of a sudden, things work as unexpected. This person wants to take advantage of you. And then you're like, what does that now mean to me? You're reminded you're a daughter and a servant of God. You are a child in His kingdom. So there are things that you need to set standards and principles. So I walked ahead and told him, you know what, sir? There is this that I don't emulate in my life. We just related on a personal, like we are just, we are colleagues. Minus that, I can't help. Minus that, I don't promise to offer. And this guy, because of betrayal, most of the time is when you feel you've been disrespected by human being. 2 days, I'm given a termination letter. And I'm like, the accusation was, you've been indisciplined, you've been reporting very late, and you don't perfect your duty so well. And I picked the letter. It hurt me, because that was the only hope. And remember, you're just from school, and you remember that thing. You remember, like, when you go back to the village, it's like you're discouraging your villagers to go to the university. It's like they had you more pain. And I was like, God, what next? What next? But I chose to rejoice over it. I chose to thank God for everything, because I've stood up for His testimony. And that was not just, it was just a little bit of a challenge. So I knew, if God is for me, no one will be against me. If it was not made for me, then I have nothing to worry about. But deep down I was hurt, because all my hope was there. Deep down I was hurt. You've not been given your salary, you've been working. And I was like, I need to let these things go. And what I did is, I went back to my knees and told God, thank you because I grumbled. Thank you because I put trust in man. I just want to follow your way. I just want to walk your way. And from there, it's when He confirmed He's the Father to His own kids. It is when He confirmed He's the Father to the fatherless. And I walked up. I was so happy. And someone could ask me, why are you happy and you've been terminated job na sahi ni ngumu kupata kazi? And I told them, you know what? I have a maker who has designed my purpose. And time went by, because I chose to release it. And when I could talk to my friends or people around me, they could not understand me. So I chose to keep it, because personally I had peace. I had compassion. Time went forward and I didn't check law. Whatever we were working, the guy was fired, the company was shut down, and was like, what happened? So there were so many accusations about the company, and so many things happened. Most of the people there, they're in charge and everything, they suffered a lot. They suffered a lot. They still have cases to handle. But I'm not rejoicing over that. I'm rejoicing because God worked everything for good. I'm imagining if I was in that situation and all those things happen. And remember where you come from. No one is there to help you. Maybe right now I've been behind the bus, but God didn't want me to be there. And that's why He had to pull me as His child and take me to a different place where I always tell people it is always a testimony. They tell me it's connection, I tell them I have a maker. It is the God of Esther that I trusted. Went into prayer and fasted and told God, if I perish, I perish. But this is when you directed my way. I took my papers and told God, you need to flavor them with a different aroma, that whoever touches them may feel a difference of it. And I tell you, there's no way I've taken my papers and I've been given a no as an answer. Because I realized there is a God in heaven who makes things work for us. And from that story of prodigal son, we also look at the idea of Lord's Prayer, chapter 6, what we say. It is there to emphasize the reciprocal nature of forgiveness and the importance of relationship with our God. You have to forgive because already God forgave you. You don't have not to forgive because God has not forgiven you. He gave us a second chance. He gave us another chance. So the other thing is, the other scenario is, I'm looking at the forgiveness on the cross. We see how Jesus went through. He was crucified. Look at the people who crucified him. What were they saying? Luke 23:34. Luke chapter 23. Maybe you can find time and go through it. Luke chapter 23, verses 34. They were the people, after they've done the crucifixion together with the two criminals. Look at what Jesus says. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. That is like Jesus is being exemplified as forgiveness, is exemplifying forgiveness and compassion to humankind. They don't know what they are doing. Instead, yes, it was in line with what was prophesied. It is the only way that man will have been delivered. But look at Jesus, because he's looking at them at what they're saying. They didn't have the understanding. They didn't have the knowledge of what they were doing. And that's why he had to seek mercy for them. And that's why he had to seek mercy for them. He had to ask God to forgive them. Yes, that is the way he was supposed to go. But look at him. Remember, he had the human form body where he had to undergo all this pain. I'm looking at those nails. I'm looking at him being whipped. But he chose to say, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Yeah. So that tells you how forgiveness can portray the idea of compassion with who the people you maybe have issues with, the people you have friction with. And even now when you go deeper in Paul's letters, we all know them, like in Ephesians chapter 3, verses 31 to 32, and even in Colossians 3:13, we can see, actually in Corinthians 2, 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 7, the whole chapter, let me say so, the whole chapter, we look at Paul, who is writing to the church in Corinth, and he is addressing them a powerful message on how forgiveness is powerful and how it transforms humankind. And when you look at verses 5 to 7, it begins by acknowledging the challenges or the conflicts faced by the church. It refers to the aspect where a member of the church had been caused pain and sorrow. So we realize these things are happening. And that's why these letters are there to encourage us as today's church. Paul reminds them the appropriate response to an individual, verses 7. It is where it talks of you forgive and comfort to avoid being overwhelmed by excess sorrow. In Corinthians chapter 2. Corinthians chapter 2. So, verses 7. So you should rather turn to forgive and comfort him, or you may be overwhelmed by excessive sorrow. So if you don't forgive, then sorrow will overwhelm you. If you don't forgive, bitterness will be part of your story. If you don't forgive, stagnation may happen because you've not let things go. So to avoid all that, to continue with your journey, forgive and even comfort yourself or comfort whoever has hurt you. You need to forgive because it is the only personal act. We talk of the constitutional act, the law act, but forgiveness is a personal act. A personal act, but a communal one. It must be communal. So as a church, we are called to support and restore one another when we stumble and cause harm to one another. Remember, we are raised different. We have different characteristics amongst ourselves. And we most of the time we may differ when we come into some point of agreement. We may differ, or someone may comment poorly, or someone may comment something that will hurt you, or maybe you choose to do something as church and someone may betray you. But look, Paul is like writing, he's not only writing to the church of Corinth, but he's also writing to us as church of today, that we need to forgive. We need to embrace that one. We need to comfort one another. Because if we don't do that, then we are not building the body of Christ. Forgiveness allows us to create that environment of healing. It restores us to the faith in our faith. It restores us the faith in our community right now. And it will make us live within peace amongst ourselves. And when you continue with verses 10 to 11, Paul goes on and expresses his own forgiveness and motivation behind it. He's not only ordering them what to be, but he's also confessing his forgiveness and motivation to the people of Corinth, to the church of Corinth. So it teaches us that forgiveness is a personal act. It is an act of wisdom and a spiritual discernment. And it is a choice. Now that it is a choice, it is not only a personal choice, but it is made in the presence of Christ. It is a choice that you choose to do because you realize the importance or the benefits behind it. And that prevents Satan from exploiting our division, and we strive within the body of Christ. When we forgive one another, we align with our Maker. We align with the God's redemptive plan. We align or we overcome the schemes of the enemy. We don't give an enemy a chance. And when we continue with verses 14 all the way to 16, we see him emphasizing the transformative power of forgiveness. But thanks be to God. That is in verses 14. But thanks be to God. It is through forgiveness we become participants in the Christ redemptive work. It is through forgiveness we become participants in Christ's redemptive work. Our willingness to forgive and the extent of the same grace to one another will become a testimony to the world. When you continue from verse 14 to 16, it is where it is talking of an aroma and something to do with fragrance. We become the fragrance aroma of Christ. The way maybe you've blended yourself so smart and there's that perfume, you add yourself to smell good. So now, with forgiveness, we become in an intimacy, a testimony. A testimony is something that is open. People don't need to ask it, but they will see. It is already there to the world. We become a fragrant aroma to the Christ, like Paul, spreading the knowledge of him and his forgiveness to those around us. It is out of Paul, he could give a motivation because he has done it already. He chose to forgive. And that's where a vital aspect in our Christian faith and the community we are living. It is a weapon that we stand against the schemes of the enemy. A testimony that transforms our love for Christ, our love for one another, our love for what we find in our ways, what comes in our way. So it is one thing we need to understand is forgiveness is not just a one-time journey. It is not just a one-time journey. It is an act that is continuous. The journey that requires to have strength. It requires us to have humility. It requires you to have forgiveness. And as we forgive, we are also forgiven. We experience the abundant grace of God. We experience His mercy on the world. We forgive who forgives us unconditionally. How many times have you gone against God? How many times have you doubted this God? And then you still come back and tell him, Daddy, I forgave you. Daddy, I went against you. He still finds us. He still forgives us because he embraces us. So forgiveness embraces that wholeheartedly. It embraces us wholeheartedly. I don't know how to put it, but accommodates. It engulfs you with a lot of comfort. There's a lot of hope. There's potential. There's future in you. There's those that will always experience that maybe you've never thought of. So even when you look at Colossians 3:13, where Paul writes to the Colossae, he tells them, you need to bear with one another. You need to bear with one another. That is Colossians 3:13, where he tells them that bearing with one another, if one has to plate against one another, forgive each other as the Lord has forgiven you. The emphasis in the Bible is Lord has forgiven you. It's not he is forgiving, no. He has forgiven you. Forgiveness is guaranteed in his mercies. But now what the task behind us is the condition, because you have to forgive others. The Lord has forgiven you. So it means if you're not forgiving others, then it means something is wrong. But the Lord has forgiven you. So if the Lord himself, the maker, the creator of the universe, chose to forgive us, why not us? Yeah. Why not us? So in that verse, it is telling us that we need to bear one another. He is writing to the church of the Colossae, but even to us, it is applying to us. Bearing one another requires what we call patience. It requires endurance. It requires acknowledgement. You need to acknowledge one another. You need to accommodate one another. Because when you bear with one another, then forgiveness is quite essential to them. It is a way out. It will have to work with you. So that verse inspires us to work with forgiveness, embracing the transformative power of Christ. We need to bear with one another. Why? Why am I talking of this transformative power? The moment you choose to forgive me, and in real sense you let things go, I'll not keep hurting you. I'll realize there is a point that it will come to human being and realize this person, and that's why you always hear people talk, is always humble. He accommodates the class of everyone. And that's why when you choose to keep on forgiving one, the one who is hurting you, the one who is betraying you, to some point they pick a lesson from you. It is out of forgiveness we pick lessons. They may not exercise it to you, but trust me, the way we say it is a testimony to the world. That person, that whatever you chose to let it go, they always testify of it. And remember, we are what we confess. He will never, or they will not continue staying under that cocoon of hurting people. They will not continue to stay in that cocoon of betraying people. It's like you've instilled them a vaccine of transformation. One time, one day, maybe they'll choose to change. They'll choose, some people don't hurt you because they know. It is not, it's something that they planned to. Maybe they didn't know. But the moment you choose to let things go, then maybe they realize and they also release it. And it's like you've ministered to someone to go and minister to others. So it is something continual. And that's why we are talking of the inner peace, the freedom that we gain, the compassion that comes within us. And with all that, forgiveness gives us the courage to face life. Forgiveness gives us the courage to face giants. Forgiveness gives us, even when we are belittled, we fit in. Even when we are embraced, we fit in. Even when we are rejected, forgiveness, letting things go, allows us to fit in those scenarios, because you realize you have been forgiven. It is not you're being forgiven. You have been forgiven. So it is your act as a personal choice. You need to exercise forgiveness amongst yourself. In doing that, it's your experience, you are practicing the transformative power of forgiveness in our lives, and the world against us. So it is my prayer that we embrace forgiveness wholeheartedly. We may exceed forgiveness for those who have wronged us. That is my prayer this day, this morning, that we may seek to forgive one another. We may not confess to them. We may not make a call, maybe it is your family or your friend, but choose to release them. Choose to release them. There is a lot that you gain personally because it's a personal act. You are not only protecting them, but you're protecting yourself. That we let forgiveness be a guiding principle in our lives, in our daily dealings, in our relationship, enabling us to create a community where healing and restoration and love is born. It doesn't require you anything, or there's no qualification, a natural qualification, or any payment that you need to pay to be forgiven. It is free. It is just a personal act. And it has come out of your mind, your heart, and you confess it. That I let things go. I let things go. I don't hold on to things. Looking at the lesson, you allow those scenarios of betrayals or pain be a lesson to you. You keep on moving on. Don't hold, because when you hold on things, you get stagnant. When you look at Joseph, when he was sold into slavery, Joseph did not complain. My brothers have done 1, 2, 3. He had to move on. He had to move on. And that's why we can see there's no stagnation in the life of Joseph. Even when you look at David, there's no stagnation in their life because they are embracing these things. They're not working with what has been done in the future. They're focusing on the future. And even when these things come back again, they choose to forgive. They choose to let things go. So this morning, that is my word today. And I bless the Lord for that. I pray that we lead a life of forgiveness, and God will bless us so much. Thank you so much.